Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the City Governance Committee meetings. Today I would like to start with paying my respects, acknowledgement to country. I would like to begin today's meeting and acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which we gather and pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging. Welcome to the last City Governance Committee for 2022. Woohoo! On the 7th of December, and I declare this meeting open at 10:10 a.m. And I would like to advise attendees in the room that this meeting is being webcast and audio recorded. We're moving on to leave of absence, and I please note that Councillor Russell has had to leave. She is feeling unwell and we wish her a speedy recovery. But we also note that Councillor Herrenmeyer and Councillor Wilcox are away today. So is there a mover for this motion? Councillor Stemp has moved this motion. Do I have a seconder? Mr Mayor has seconded that. Do any councillors wish to speak to the motion? There being none, I now open the floor to vote. Could all those in favour please raise your hands? That has been carried. Thank you very much and for your understanding. We hope Councillor Russell does have a speedy recovery. We'll move on to item 4, declarations of conflict of interest. Does any councillors have a conflict of interest that they wish to declare today in any of today's reports? There being none, I will now refer to the reports today. So we're moving on to item 5.1, and today's agenda is going to be a lengthy one, so please bear with us. But first up, we've got item 5.1, and I welcome Ms Kay Sullivan to the chair for the 2022 Logan Listens Resident Survey results. Ms Kay Sullivan, would you like to speak to the report?
Good morning, councillors. This report relates to the Logan Listens Resident Survey. It's a biennial survey that is carried out. I'll actually take the report as read, but I'd like to introduce James Parker, who is the National Research Director at Taverner, and James is going to provide us with some succinct insights into the survey.
Good morning, James, and welcome to our last meeting. Please proceed.
And thank you all for the opportunity to present today. I've taken that word succinct on note, so I'll keep it as short and painless as possible. I'd also like to point out, as has been mentioned, there is a full report sitting behind this. So if there is anything people would like to know in more detail, hopefully that will be in the report. And I would ask, Madam Chair, is it possible if we keep questions till the end?
Absolutely.
Thank you. Okay, in that case, I will aim to get through this in hopefully around 20 to 30 minutes, and hopefully that will allow time for questions if people have anything they would like to ask.
Oh, I'd hope that you're a little bit quicker than 20 minutes, so please hurry.
Okay. All right, I'm going to get through all that. I do think it's important just to focus a little on the methodology. This is a survey of 1,600 local residents. It's a very large survey. I should point out that we conduct over 40 of these surveys for councils up and down throughout New South Wales and Queensland, and this is a large survey by our standards. 2 surveys, both of facilities and services and customer experience. We're just going to talk about facilities and services today. The other important point is that over half of the calls these days are conducted on mobile phones, as you would expect with the fall in landlines, and the average duration for facilities and services was slightly over 16 minutes. So we do ask people for a fair bit of their time, and we're always delighted at the amount of people who are happy to share their views with council. I'll skip the random sampling because I'm sure hopefully you're aware of that. Just talk very quickly about who we spoke to. In terms of the profile of people, we do have a fairly good mix of ages and genders, which is always pleasing. And in fact, we had a lot more younger people take part this year than in the past, which is great to see. 71% of the people are ratepayers, and the majority of people have lived in Logan for more than 15 years, which is quite standard in these sorts of surveys. In terms of overall satisfaction with council, the score is down slightly. So in 2020, 68% of people were satisfied. That fell to 58%. And that means the mean satisfaction score on a 1 to 5 scale was 3.82 out of 5 in 2020 and 3.61. Now, as I'll show you in a minute, that figure is still good, But I would also just mention that, as I mentioned, we've done a lot of these surveys up and down throughout New South Wales and Queensland, and we have detected a fairly cranky mood amongst the population in most of the surveys we've done. In fact, all the surveys we've done this year. I think it's a facet of post-COVID exhaustion, cost of living pressures, the extreme weather events. There's been a lot of government in people's lives in the last 2 years, and we're finding that coming across in all the surveys that we're doing, and it has come across to a certain extent in this. Now, that's not saying that the factors are not Logan specific, some of them may well be, but I'm just hopefully providing a bit of broader context. As you can see, the overall satisfaction has fallen slightly since we started doing this poll in 2010. Yes, but at 3.6, it's still well above the median score or the neutral score of 3, which is where you want to be. What's interesting is that, and I'll talk more about this in a minute, but of those who were satisfied with the job that council is doing, they struggle to articulate why they're satisfied. And the reality is that for these people, council is just doing its job and letting them get on with their lives. And so as long as council is doing its job and letting them worry about other stuff, they're happy. Of those who were satisfied, the only thing that they were really focusing on is roads and traffic concerns. That is an ongoing theme throughout this report. I believe it is partially a factor, again, of the extreme weather events and the effect that's had on road quality. And again, I say that with some comfort because it has been exhibited up and down the East Coast in all the surveys that we've done. And amongst those who were dissatisfied, roads and traffic definitely came to the fore. 37% of people mentioned that unprompted as the main issue for their dissatisfaction. We survey 7 different councils throughout regional Queensland, and I'm happy to say that Logan is the highest of those in terms of overall satisfaction. So although the score is down slightly on 2020, it is still the highest of the 7 councils that we survey, and that's something that you should be very pleased with, I think. Not complacent, but at least pleased. I'm going to talk a little bit about the different facilities and services. I'll just skip this quadrant analysis for the moment. I'm going to go very quickly through the different facilities and services that we measure. We measure over 40 facilities and services within the survey. In each case, we ask people for their satisfaction with those facilities and services using a 1 to 5 scale. You'll see the mean or average score listed there on the right-hand side and the proportion who are satisfied or dissatisfied in the bar chart. So we can see that, for example, I'm not going to go through all of these, obviously, but things like immunisation, Logan Entertainment Centre, Eat Safe Logan, sporting grounds and facilities, food safety is very highly rated by local residents, and the others are all well above that neutral 3 score as well. That's really the one you want to watch. You don't want things falling below that 3 level, ideally. In terms of changes between 2020 and 2022, the only change was that the immunisation program satisfaction went down. The rest were all statistically similar. And what we have here, and again, I won't dwell on them at depth because they are in the report, but what we talk about, the internal benchmark is where it's fallen since 2020, and the external benchmark is how it rates in relation to the other 7 regional councils in Queensland that we measure. So we can see, for example, that the Logan Entertainment Centre, which we measured against entertainment centres more generally, rates very highly, whereas food safety and playgrounds measures slightly lower against external benchmarks. The extent of those benchmarks is shown in the report. The other healthy communities, again, all comfortably above the range of 3, which is pleasing. We have seen some falls in this latest survey. Dog off leash areas has fallen, safe community safety programs, amenity on safety on our roads, and illegal dumping. Again, some of those have fallen. 3 of them have fallen since 2020, and one of them, animal management, is above the benchmark for other councils. Community and neighbourhood centres and council pools was below the benchmark for other councils. In terms of the environment, and this is something that is becoming increasingly important to residents across the councils we survey, we can see that the scores are high. They're very high. General waste collection, 4.17 out of a possible 5, really high, along with recycling and reuse. These are facilities that the community is very happy with. And there are also the tipping vouchers. They're happy with those as well, not surprisingly. All those scores are consistent with the scores from 2020, so no changes there. And they're all either at the same as or higher than the benchmark for other councils. In In terms of infrastructure, they are all above 3, except for maintenance of local roads, which has fallen below 3 to a mean of 2.89. So that is an obvious red flag. It probably won't surprise anyone. I know that you can never spend enough money on local roads, but I suspect that that issue has been exacerbated in this latest survey by the weather events and its impact on road quality. So as we can see, that score has fallen from 3.28, which is above the mean, to 2.89, which is below in this latest survey. In terms of infrastructure, this is about the water supply, and I'm happy to say that the majority of people are very happy with the water supply, 71% in fact satisfied, and a mean score of 3.94 out of 5, which is fantastic, so don't need to dwell on that one. And likewise with sewerage, 86% of people satisfied with sewage service, so again, won't dwell on that. In terms of the infrastructure summary, as I said, the maintenance of local roads has gone down, but you'll see in terms of the external benchmark, it's actually the same as other councils. So it's not to suggest there's not a problem, but it is to suggest it's a problem that is shared with many of your peers throughout regional Queensland. Sorry, my clicker is... Proud City, again, some very strong scores. Libraries, festivals and events have both scored very highly, and there's nothing there that is to be alarmed about, so these are all good results. And yeah, again, although one of them has come down in the latest survey, they're all high. And as you can see, these are all on par, or a couple of them are down on 2020, but no real alarm. In terms of the quadrant, I will come back to that in a moment. I haven't focused on it yet, but I will come to it. And economy and growth, 3.58, 3.56, 3.36 are all strong results. The lowest is in attracting new businesses. What I would say is, and it's important to understand this, is that when we call people, their satisfaction score is a facet of two things: their actual satisfaction with the facility and service and the perceived satisfaction, and they're not always the same thing. And in some cases, people can see and feel or hear the services, so things like roads and libraries, they understand them very strongly. Others, they don't really understand. So things like attracting new businesses, people would have very little idea of the job that council is doing behind the scenes to attract new businesses. And the reason I mention that is because councils are typically better at doing things than they are at communicating the job that they're doing. And I always say it's doubly important that councils get better at communicating their wins and the work that they're doing, particularly in those hard-to-see areas, which are not obvious to people, which are operating behind the scenes, so that where, for example, a new business or a new industry does come to the region, people just don't assume that it was going to come anyway, or that at least they appreciate the role that council played if that's the case. I think it's a really important point to make. And yeah, the means are all on par with 2020, so nothing to be concerned about there. One interesting finding, which won't surprise anybody in the room, is that one of the questions we have in the survey is housing affordable in the Logan City Council area? And the proportion of that has dropped from 74 to 46% since in the last 2 years. And again, I don't think that will surprise anybody, but it does highlight the issues that are being faced by the community in terms of affordable housing at the moment. In terms of is there a good mix of housing options, the figures are down slightly, but nothing really to be alarmed about there. And are there enough job opportunities within the city for residents of Logan? And that's a more pleasing finding. We're seeing that the proportion saying there's not enough has fallen from 42% down to 30%. And I guess that's a facet of the skill and labour shortages that we're seeing across the board, and the low unemployment rate is certainly having an impact there. And in terms of the benchmarks, they're very similar to 2020, as I mentioned earlier. Finally, in terms of high-performing organisation, again, most of the scores are good. Consulting the community, 3.27. That's not fantastic, but it's not dreadful either. Consulting the community is a little bit like fixing the roads. You can never spend enough money or resources on it, as far as people are concerned. But as you'll see in a moment, I'll come back to it. Logan is still regarded, as I recall, fairly highly compared to its peers. In terms of disaster management, the council's disaster management information is perceived to be easy to understand by almost 2/3 of the population, which is up slightly on 2020, which is great. And is the information relevant to you? Again, almost 2 out of 3 people are saying yes, which is great. And in terms of the benchmarks, they're all very similar to 2020 rather. And you can see in consulting the community, although it is down in points, in terms of the external benchmark, it's on par with other councils. So it's not something where Logan is being specifically singled out for that on that specific issue. I'm not going to explain derived importance other than to say it's a way we measure importance so that we can work out how important different facilities and services are to residents without actually having to ask them the importance. And it's a way that we work out the correlation between the overall satisfaction with council and their satisfaction with specific facilities and services. And the reason I talk about that is that we divide all those facilities and services we've talked about into one of 4 quadrants. And it's just important to spend 30 seconds to talk about this, because the top right corner is your sweet spot. They're the services and facilities where council is perceived to be doing a really good job and they are perceived to be of higher importance to the community. The red flag area is your top left, higher importance rather, but lower satisfaction. The bottom right one is opportunities. That's where people are happy with the job that council is doing, but they're not correlating that with overall satisfaction. They're not making that connection between I think this is really good, hence council's doing a really good job. So we say it's an opportunity because there's opportunities for council to make that connection with people and hopefully use that to help lift their overall satisfaction score. That's where all those facilities and services I've talked about fit on those quadrants. And I'd just like to finish the presentation by going into that and showing where all the facilities and services fit. Now, I apologise, these are hard to read because there's a lot of them in this particular survey, but they are talked about in more detail in the report. But they're your strengths to maintain. The top right quadrant is those are the things where council is perceived to be doing a good job, and they are influencing people's views on their overall satisfaction with council. The priorities for council are your red flags, and these are the area where the satisfaction is lower, and derived importance is higher. And so these are the areas which may warrant further attention from council, either in the job that they're doing, or in the way that they're communicating the job, or I guess a combination of both. And finally, the opportunities is the area where people are happy with the job that council is doing, but they're not really making the connection between that particular facility and service and overall satisfaction. So that's the bulk of the report. There's a fair bit more, as I said, that's in the actual report, which I won't pass on now because I understand we are pressed for time. But I would appreciate it if you would have just indulged me with a very quick story, which I think will illustrate a really important point that I want to make about this survey in general and before I take questions. And it's a story about a small boy, 7-year-old, who had never talked. And his parents were obviously deeply concerned about it. And they brought in doctors and specialists and no one could answer it. And one day this boy is having breakfast and he suddenly says to his mother, "Mother, this porridge is cold." And his mother is amazed. He said, "You can talk." And he says, "Of course I can talk." And she says, "Well, why have you never talked before?" And he said, "Well, because up until now everything's been most satisfactory." And I think that little boy is like the relationship most residents have with their council. As long as council is doing the job that they are doing, people are happy, that they're matching their expectations and people get on with it. And that's why this survey is so important, because most of the communication you have with the community is with people who have got issues or they're disgruntled or they've had problems. And I'm not saying those aren't important, but they don't necessarily reflect the mainstream of views. The people who are getting on with their lives and expecting council to do a good job, and council is meeting those expectations, can get on and worry about other stuff in their lives. And so I think the fact that the score you've got, the 3.61, is a reflection that for those people, the people we reach in this random sample, which is an expensive process but is really important to reach that middle ground, they're pretty happy with the job that council is doing. And again, that's not a reason to be complacent, but it is to say that both in isolation and relative to other councils, the people of Logan are by and large pretty happy. So thank you for your time. I appreciate everyone's time, and I'm very happy to take questions.
Thank you very much. That was very comprehensive. I'm really glad that Logan is number 1 out of 7 areas. We have had a few things that have impacted us here in Logan, one being floods, which should be listed on those priority list, some of those. And obviously the new business, COVID, has affected us over the last few years. But really good score for us here, and I'm glad that we're number 1. I have a couple of councillors that are ready to ask you questions. We'll first go to Mr Mayor and then Councillor Raven. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It's not a question, it's actually a response as Mayor. As you say, we've never been challenged as much as what we have, particularly with the rainfall that we've had and, of course, the biggest flood since '74. I understand why we're down in some of those areas, and when you look at what actually happened during the flood and the amount of roads that were taken out, but also the amount of potholes that were produced, and of course it kept raining. Mosquitoes are another issue which is consistent with the flooding, and also the maintenance of parks. You know, if it rains every week, it's very hard to get to and mow those parks. I think given the issues at hand, and if we had those people in here and we explained to them why we're low on those issues, I think they would understand that councillors, you know, address those issues as best they could, and they're outside our parameters. And I think, personally, I think I'm happy with the score, given the fact that we've had those challenges. And I think that if we have a normal year next year, I think a lot of those concerns will disappear. And I think, but, you know, when you look at it all, I'm quite happy. Never completely happy, but happy.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I totally agree. Councillor Raven and then Councillor Bradley.
Thank you, Madam Chair, through you. And I agree with much what the Mayor is saying there, that you can, when you explain to people that, oh, we had a flood and then we had COVID pressures, so we didn't have staff, so we couldn't fix potholes as quickly as you wanted, they get it, but you can't speak to the silent majority about that, and so they're going to feel dissatisfied. My questions, and great report, thank you very much for the presentation. No questions on the report, just some questions for the org regarding some of the feedback we got, which I see as opportunities. So in, I think it's page 7 of the report, not of the attached papers, just so not of Cabinet's report, of our report. So email newsletters emerge as the preferred method of receiving council news and information, which is really cool and exciting. What would also be cool and exciting is if councillors had access to email so that we could communicate with our residents, because further down it also notes that on page 8, in regards to the flooding event in particular, dot point 3 on that page says, often noting the input from councillors and other staff. I'd love to hear what that actual feedback was. I tried digging through the report. It wasn't any more specific than that dot point. It'd be great in future, especially if we're doing questions around something like a flood event where we're held to a very high standard of expectation. If we could ask questions around what was the most valuable way to, did you need help? What was the most valuable way that you got help? Right? Those, because that, I really applaud you for asking those specific flooding event questions. I thought that was a great opportunity, well done, because we haven't really had that sort of window of opportunity to ask while it's still fresh in people's mind. But really digging into, like, how can we do better to help you as a feedback point, because it's something that you can't ask people mid-crisis, and it's, by the time we do reviews and we do everything else, it's months and months later, and it's hard to then come back to them. But if we could, whenever we've got an opportunity like that, to ask people how they'd like us to help them better in those opportunities, that'd be great. But yeah, it'd be amazing if council could figure out a way to provide the vast list of resident email addresses. We have 2 councillors, so that we can communicate with our residents through electronic email addresses. In speaking to the Inspector General for Disasters at a lunch I attended a few weeks ago, he found a privacy loophole for Red Cross where he wrote to them. Because he has everyone's email addresses, so he wrote to everybody saying, hey, would you like Red Cross to have your email address so they can contact you about disaster preparedness? So it'd be great if council could write to its list of email addresses and say, your council would love to be able to communicate with you directly through the method that we understand is your preferred method of communication, please let us know by ticking this box that you're happy for your councillor to contact you. So hopefully we have more than 50 email addresses per division. That would be amazing, because that's all community consultation, which we're seeing is something the community wants more of, and it's essentially free because it's emails and it's councillors' time, which is already included in the budget. So that would be amazing. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Raven. Councillor Bradley.
Thank you. Through the chair, yeah, my comments were going to be of the similar vein because I picked up on that and mentioned it in the previous committee. But I really want to ask where people live. I couldn't really find where people lived in the survey. Like, I know historically you've sort of had a proportion of rural, proportion of urban. What is the mix?
There is, I believe, and I apologise, I didn't bring the report with me today. But there is a breakdown, I believe, by suburb, and if not, it can be supplied. We've got the exact suburbs of everybody.
I understand what Councillor Raven is saying about like people who are flooded, etc. Fortunately, Division 1 is quite higher than the rest of the city, so it's going to not necessarily affect some areas of the city, whereas it will impact greatly other areas of the city. So I suppose it would be good to get that breakdown of where people were surveyed.
Within the report, I can certainly provide that, Councillor. Within the report, all the results are broken down by age, gender, and where they live. But I just need to put some caution on it. Once you start breaking those results down too far, you need to be careful about reading too much into them.
I understand.
Because you're starting to talk to quite small groups of people.
I used to do research, so I know.
Oh, right. Sorry, I apologise for...
that information I would appreciate.
I believe it's all included within the appendix, but I will check when I get back.
Thank you, Councillor Councillor Bradley, for that question. I think page 86 is the start of the what suburb or area do you live in is listed in that report. So if you can see that suburbs, page 86. Councillors, are there any further questions? Yes.
Could I just to clarify, can I just have the proportion or the how many or whatever? Just
Absolutely.
Something like that. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you. You're right to get that information to Councillor Bradley. Thank you very much for doing that. Councillors, there should be a motion up on the board shortly. Thank you, ladies. Is there a mover for the report's motion displayed on the screen? Councillor Kransky has moved the motion. Is there a seconder? Councillor Bradley. I'll now open the floor for all those in favour. Please raise your hands. That has been carried unanimously. Thank you very much for that. Before we go, is there any general business for the Portfolio Manager Office Manager, Ms Kay Sullivan, today? None? Ms Kay, do you have any for us?
Nothing today, thank you.
Thank you, and I wish you all a happy and safe holiday. Thank you.
Thank you, Council.
Right, councillors, we'll move on to item 5.2, Transform Logan Framework. Could I ask the Chief Executive Officer, Mr Darren Scott, to enter into the discussions, please?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So, and good morning, councillors. This report is a result of a council resolution in May which asked us to come back with a framework for a city transformation initiative. We've got a presentation which I was going to throw up and quickly run through. Noting, however, though, we've been across this ground a couple of times, including at the setting of the scene, so I'll go through it relatively quickly, but if people want to stop and talk about it, that's fine too. So what this does, I suppose, is acknowledge that the council has already in its corporate plan 2021 to 2026 a community vision which sets a relatively ambitious target for the city, and the community has 9 focus areas which create a set of objectives for the organisation to seek to achieve. What it does do is require more than a business as usual approach for us to move towards that ambitious community objective. What we propose to do is effectively treat that community vision to transform Logan as a mission. We've spoken a couple of times as over the setting the scene and previously around a mission-based approach. This report represents the starting point of a mission-based approach to achieving the community vision. What's in the report is, and what we ask Council to adopt, is effectively a framework, the starting point, a framework for a mission-based approach which encapsulates a set of principles and a process, and for further reports to come back to Council as we continue to develop the mission-based approach. So what is a mission? It really is aligning the organisation's policies, activities, governance practices around achieving an ambitious goal. It doesn't require complex new structures or major resourcing. What we're doing is effectively improving the alignment and improving the collaboration of interested partners, working towards achieving this community vision. The easiest way, I suppose, to understand a mission-based approach is to use the traditional Apollo mission example, where the President of the United States said that they wanted to put humans on the moon by the end of the 1960s, by the end of the decade. There was thousands and thousands of projects that were required to deliver that by a whole range of disconnected people across the world, in fact, but they were aligned by having a single mission of putting a human on the moon by the end of the decade. So, whilst ours isn't quite as ambitious as that, nonetheless transforming a city in line with the community vision is nonetheless a challenging task. And what this approach seeks to do is align the city and all the interested stakeholders, including the community, towards delivering on that community vision, that mission of effectively transforming Logan. So what is Transform Logan as a program? So it would be a City of Logan initiative directed towards achieving that vision. I put this slide on the left up at the setting the scene, noting that we've got a community vision and we've got a corporate plan which is only through till 2026, and there's a gap in terms of the longer term planning, the longer term strategic projects. And so what Transform Logan is effectively is a collection of programs and projects aimed at utilising stakeholder collaboration, good community engagement, and partners' resources, particularly other levels of government, directed towards achieving the community vision. So in the attachment, which is what we seek to be endorsed today, is a framework. The framework has, as I said, principles and processes. These are the principles which we seek to have adopted, but recognises that the Council can't do it all. And so, we have this set of principles which are the longer term time frame, highly engaged process with the community, a dynamic process. As councils would know, you have to be ready with a good project and a good plan when money becomes available at other levels of government at any time. Having a plan on the shelf and a quick response is a good way of getting funding from other parts of government. And collaborative. We can't do it ourselves. We need to leverage other levels of government, other resources to achieve all of what we need to achieve. So these are the principles we propose within the framework. In terms of the process, a couple of concepts are introduced here. This is a pretty standard, plan, do, check, act type, establish, execute, monitor and adjust type framework. In the established phase, Council would decide which focus area it might particularly want to commence and establish what we're calling a working group. This is really a group of a coalition of the willing. So if you think about energy, it was discussed yesterday, there's a range of people interested in energy in Logan and what Logan can do, in particular some of the energy companies which need us to assist with the demand management. We would put together a working group and seek to understand ways of improving our sustainability in the energy space. They would need to do something, we would need to do something, and that would move us towards more sustainability. Similarly with housing, we'd have a different set of partners, but nonetheless a set of partners that that have a shared set of problems and a shared set of resources to deal with those problems. And we would, in particular, in this case, the state and federal government seek to move a solution forward to deal with the issue of housing, which is one of the focus areas in the community vision. In the execution phase, council would decide, to allocate resources towards it. So we'd do some research, we'd bring together, people who are, part of a coalition of the willing. Council would then get to decide on what the projects look like, how it wants to engage with the community, and how it wants to resource those things, those projects. I suppose a key point to make here is if we are going to be partnering with other levels of government, we need to think about having our own skin in the game. That makes a legitimate partnership, and I think makes it more likely for us to be successful in that partnership approach. There's a monitoring and adjustment process which allows council full visibility and control over the process. This would be a council-led initiative, but with bringing partners in. So I think it's important to understand that the council would have control over this process. And you can also think about it as a, not just a set of projects, but also an umbrella branding and a way to communicate better with the community about the things which council is doing to transform Logan, to take the city towards the community's vision. So in the first half of next year, if you adopt the proposed framework, we would work with council to, look to bring forward some of those potential initiatives. In terms of what the design might be, how do we shape those potential initiatives. The Office of the CEO is resourcing that work, so that's been done within the Office of the CEO, and we'll work with council through briefings and committees in the first half of next year to shape that. It allows council, in the first half of next year, through the budget process, to make resource allocations as it might like, and to importantly design and deliver the community consultation process across 2023. So we expect council to be at the centre of the community consultation. It's important we get the design of it right, so it's effective and not an ineffective process. And I think it's also important to recognise, given that time frame, that this is a long-term project, but you already have a couple of things rolling which would sit within the Transform Logan framework. There's a couple of projects already in flight, so you can show early progress, as early as the first part of next year. And in fact, if you adopt the Logan Water process, I mean that's one of the first ones, coming within a transformation program activity. And I think it's important that the city understands, the work that council is doing on these really big long-term projects and receives the credit for it. So in terms of the next steps, should you adopt the framework today, we will continue to work on that initial Transform Logan work program, and then come back to you in the new year for council to confirm focus areas and the community consultation and the stakeholder engagement process. Thanks, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Scott. I have three councillors waiting to ask questions. I've got Mr. Mayor, Councillor Koransky and Councillor Bradley.
Yep, it's not a question, it's more a bit of a statement to suggest that we only receive about 3% of tax that the governments actually push out to people. When you look at that, income tax, stamp duties, GSTs, it's pretty easy to work out that we only get 3%. I know people out there in the community see the rates as a large impost on them, but when you consider the outcomes of that money, we are the most trusted government. Not that we've got a lot of competition, but what I want to highlight is some time back, and I don't remember which year, but it used to be roads, rates and rubbish, and then the Local Government Act was changed to allow councils to get involved in more things, and to some degree we aren't just roads, rates and rubbish, we actually manage the city itself. And this is quantifying into areas that we probably need to address most. And we've done this previously in other programs where we've identified weaknesses in the city, and we've had to obviously draw resources from federal and state and bring them into the city to make sure that our city was prepared with all the social issues that we've addressed. Now it's about those three subjects there, and it's about containment of what we consider to be the most important issues that we need to deal with as a city, and that's where we're going. So we don't stray outside of that, which we had previously. I think this is a great idea that we can actually get involved in a few things that we think is really important and push the city ahead, because this is what residents expect us to do. They expect us to manage the city, not only provide water and sewage and all those other issues, but address all the social issues. And this is about that type of program that we want to get involved in. So I support the program, and it's a continuation of previous programs, but it's about maximising our potential and addressing those issues that we feel are probably the most important in our community at this time. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Councillor Kransky.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair, and I too have a statement more than a question. Mr CEO, you had me at hello. I'm hugely excited to see this body of work, particularly that it's going to be a mission-based body of work coming out of council, and that we'll be building on the community vision, which is, of course, what the community told us they would like from their council. I'm very pleased also to see that this is actually going to fall under the office of the CEO in the short term, and I thank you for putting so much skin in the game. In terms of community consultation and processes, I really look forward to being part of that, and when the opportunity presents itself, please count me in. I'm a very big supporter, and when the time is right, I'll be happy to move the report.
Thank you, Councillor Kransky. I totally agree with you. Councillor Bradley.
Thank you so much, through the chair. I suppose I'm very supportive of this as well, but I want to make sure that it is across the whole city, not some sections of the city, and that we focus on our positives, not only our lack, our weaknesses, that we focus on our positive attributes as well, because there is so much opportunity for our city. Obviously, the Olympics is one thing, but and I also want to make sure that there's an element of flexibility, because we could have an extremely visionary mayoral candidate from 2024, and there could be like a total change from that as well. So I want to make sure that there's an element of flexibility there, because personally I would love to see solar streetlights everywhere in the whole city, and really transform our city as an absolute green city. Anyway, I've said my bit, but I am supportive, but I just want to make sure that it's across the whole city, not just certain sections of the city.
Thank you, Councillor Bradley. Mr Scott, did you want to reply at all?
Through you, Madam Chair, happy to make a couple of comments. In terms of that flexibility, absolutely, that's that dynamic principle which we are committed to, because money comes available, opportunities become available at relatively short notice, and we need to be responsive to that. In terms of the new mayor issue, you can see we've got on the right-hand side of that chart, dependent on council decision, which is post June 2024, which is we are explicitly acknowledging that there'll be a new council and they will need to adopt the projects that they see fit at that time. So absolutely.
Thank you. I have Councillor Raven. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And Mr CEO, I just want to applaud you for the over-the-horizon thinking and speaking to the community, especially in a growing city. A lot of their concerns are around, are we doing enough long-term planning to make sure that we're delivering the infrastructure that they expect in a time that they're comfortable with, rather than getting it 10 years too late. And the only way to do that is to plan what the city is going to look like over the next 2 decades. So I'm really excited to see where this is going. I love the mission-based approach, because when you start talking to business and to community saying we want you on board, they lean in, and it's really exciting to see them doing that already. And I know that the things that we say in this room and the ideas that we put to the community mean a lot to them. We've seen that with the innovation pre-scene already, with people buying property there because they want to be part of it before we've even decided what it looks like. So I'm so keen to see where we go with this. I love to see some of the suggestions you brought forward, and the best part, as Councillor Karansky said, is that you're taking some ownership of it, which shows how important it is to you. So I just want to applaud you for doing that, and very happy to work as closely and as hard as you need us to on this, because I think it's really important for our community.
Thank you, Councillor Raven. I too, I'm super glad that I'm part of this council that has the vision to look forward. So that being said, is there any further questions? Councillor Lane.
Thanks very much. Thanks very much for the presentation, Mr. CEO. I know that hitting the ground running, having new directors come in, staff, movements and things like that, you've managed to put this together, not just with the council crew, but also with the elected officials, in particular the mayor. It actually says to the community that we're a council that works together and works well. While everyone may not have their particular little thing addressed in this, we're actually looking out for the best interests of the whole of the community, and we're looking at the individual types of communities and addressing those concerns. So from rural to urban, and from high density to low density, we're actually looking at their individual circumstances and creating a long-term plan. So thank you very much to all of your team for putting this together, and to the ELT and councillors, thanks for this.
Thank you. No further questions, councillors? A spelling mistake in the presentation. Okay. Shame. Can someone please look into that? Thank you very much. Councillors, Councillor Karansky?
Just moving it when it's time, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Before we get to that, councillors, I just have a note that there is a PowerPoint presentation that we displayed at this meeting, and this will be required to be tabled. So we should have a motion on the board. I only need a mover for this. Could I please get a mover for that? Councillor? Yes, thank you. So Councillor Bradley has moved that motion for that one. And now we're moving on to the next. Oh, all those in favour. Sorry, we missed that bit. All those in favour. Tony, are you awake? Thank you. That has been carried. Thank you very much. And now we should have a recommendation on the board. Please have a read over. Councillor Karansky has moved that. If I go to seconder, Councillor Raven. All those in favour, please raise your hand. Thank you very much. That has, yes, been carried unanimously. Thank you. Councillor Bannon, please just hold it up a little bit longer. Thank you. Before our CEO leaves the room, does anybody have any general business for Darren at all? No? Do you have any for us? Thank you. Oh, you nearly got out of here quick.
I would have thought
Mr.
that
Mayor?
the CEO would stay for the budget amendments.
I believe he is. He's just going to take a back seat.
Okay.
Do you, just to answer questions, do you have any general business for him at all? No. Thank you. Thank you, Darren. Thank you for hanging around. Okay, councillors, we're going to move on to item 5.3. Just let me get organised here, because there has been a bit of an amendment to this one, and it is a confidential report. So I will now ask the Finance Manager, Carolyn Buggs, to enter into discussions. Before we do that, I note that item 5.3 is a confidential report, and it is considered necessary to take the discussions of this report into a closed session. This matter relates to the Government Regulations 2012, Queensland, Section 254J, brackets 3. And it is for the local government's budget. Do any councillors wish to move into a closed session for this item? If so, please intend the discussion overview, if different to the prepared motion as displayed on the screen. Please provide any other wording. Does anybody need to go into closed session? It's only the attachments that are confidential as well. Anybody wish to go into closed session? Councillor Bradley, do I have a seconder? Councillor Karansky has. All those in favour, please raise your hand. Councillor Bannon, this is just to go into closed session. Thank you. That has been carried. Thank you, councillors. The motion to close the meeting is now displayed on the screen. Oh, we've done that. Sorry. Can I please confirm that we're in closed session and that the I will now open the session and the live streaming is back on. Excellent. Thank you. Councillors, thank you, Ms Bug, for your report. There should be a motion up on the board shortly. Is there a mover for this report's motion as displayed on the screen? I believe the Mayor was going to move this. That's correct. Councillors, Mr Mayor has moved the motion. Is there a seconder? Councillor Bannon, thank you, has seconded. Does any councillors wish to speak to the motion? No. I will now open the floor to vote. All those in favour, please raise your hand. That has been carried unanimously. Thank you very much. We're just going to move on to the next section, which is item 5.4, which is Ms Bug again. Just bear with me for a second. So, ladies and gentlemen, we're just about to move into item 5.4. I note that 5.4, the first budget amendment for 2022-2023 is a confidential report. And it's just the two attachments that is. I've got two. It's a public report with two confidential attachments. I note that it is confidential and you can take it into a closed session under section 254J, the local government budgets. Do any councillors wish to take it into closed session? Councillor Bradley has passed that it'll go into closed session. Is there a seconder for that? All those in favour, please raise your hand. Carried. Thank you very much. The seconder was Mayor. Are we in closed session? session and the live streaming should commence. Excellent. Councillors, there should be a motion up on the screen. Could I please get a mover for the motion as displayed? Councillor Stemp has moved it and seconded Councillor Bannon. Councillors, do anyone wish to speak to the motion? No. I open the floor to vote. Please raise your hands if you're in favour. That has been carried unanimously. Thank you very much. Ms. Bugg, before you leave, does any councillor have any general business? None? You have any for us?
Nothing today, thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillors, we'll now move on to item 5.5. Just bear with me for a second. Item 5.5 is an update and an amendment to the contract plan. I have the Acting Administration Manager, Mr. Eddie Denman, here with us today. Would you like to proceed with the discussion? Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through the Chair, I note the report is read and provide the following summary. This report presents Council's procurement activities for the previous quarter, including statistics relating to the use of local government suppliers, and recommends amendments to the contracting plan to ensure it is a true reflection of the procurement activities expected to occur this financial year. The procurement activities within the contracting plans are on track, with a significant contracting plan developed for identified significant contracts, meeting the requirements of the Local Government Regulation 2012. With most of the tenders under evaluation all being duly executed, we anticipate providing further detailed information for the next quarterly report. In addition, corporate procurement are working in collaboration with council branches to develop appropriate tender documentation for tenders expected to be at the market in the third quarter, June to March 2023. They will also be commencing planning stages for the development of the 2023-2024 contracting plan. Some of the key highlights of our procurement spend within the first quarter of this financial year include a total spend of approximately $139.4 million, with local spend of $59.34 million, up from the previous financial year first quarter that was $54.57 million, an increase of $4,470,000. Thank you. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Denman. Councillor Bradley.
Thank you so much for this report, and thank you for what you're doing. That's awesome to get that local business.
Thank you. Councillors, is there any other further questions? No. Sorry, Councillor Lane. Yes, thank you.
Yeah, I think a $59.3 million local spend equates to a lot of local jobs being a lot more secure. Do you envision that figure will rise as you work through your tender processes for the 23-24 year? And is there a specific weighting given to local businesses that do apply or opt to tender for local projects?
Through Madam Chair, thank you, Councillor. We are hoping that the local spend will continue. It's hard to estimate just how much that will be, given the challenges we have in the procurement space at the moment with an increase in supply chain cost and also delays. And our focus is definitely always on looking at our local spend wherever we can in those places, and we encourage the branches to do that.
Thanks very much, and thanks to the branches that are following along with that. Thank you.
Thank you. Being no further questions, do I have a mover for the motion that is displayed on the screen? Councillor Bradley has moved it. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Lane has seconded. Can I have it by a way of show of hands? All those in favour? That has been carried unanimously. Thank you very much. Does anyone have any general business for the Acting Administration Manager? There being none, thank you. Do you have any for us?
No, thank you.
Thank you very much. We have no reports. Thank you, Eddie Omega. We have no reports to consider today. Before we do wrap up, I'd just like to say thank you to the governance team and staff for their support and I would like to wish everybody a safe and happy holiday season and a happy new year. Thank you to these wonderful ladies beside us and over the back there for supporting us throughout the year. Thank you to the video man down the back for making us look good, and we hope that you all have a great and happy holiday. That concludes today's agenda, but before we go, does anybody have any general business? Because Rick's been sitting here quite quietly hoping that no one would annoy him today. Do we have any general business? Mr. Raven, thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just to give Rick something to do. Great job, by the way, mate, in general. Just good work. Thank you for your hard work this year. I was hoping that in the January round we could have a review of the calendar of meetings. Just noting that at this time of year when we're still having meetings in the office, it's clashing with a lot of graduations, awards days, all sorts of things. Like I'm missing out on a primary school awards day right now, and I know other councillors are having the same situation. I know that we made that decision, not blaming the organisation for that, but it'd be great to just review that while that's fresh in our minds so we can tighten it up for next year to make sure that the timing works with our ability to engage with our community when they need us most around the end of the year.
Thank you, Councillor Raven. We'll take
You're
that
fine.
action.
Councillor Raven, I do recall we actually moved this meeting a week earlier this year so that we could get into those events that we all needed to. But yes, there has been some juggling. I know today a lot of councillors are extremely busy. So thank you for that question. Any further? No? And Rick, do you have any general business for us?
Not today. Thank you for your kindness.
Oh, thank you. I tried to save you all day today. Thank you very much. Councillors, I declare the City Governance Committee, the last one for the year, on 7th of December 2022 concluded at 11:39. Thank you very much for your time today. Thank you.